I won't get nervous. Um, so I was asked to do this, and it's a great honor to be able to participate in something like this. If you've never been to Pugwash before, I want to welcome you here. This is my home away from home, and I've seen many lovely things happen on this stage, and it's humbling to be able to speak from it. So I'll get right to the poetry. The first one is called Angel on the Beach, and actually it was prompted by my partner Louise's painting of the same name. We've set out for the future barefooted in the storm, fiddling whilst the ice pack burns. Waters rise and air darkens. Tornadoes of electronic opinion sweep away consciousness and intention alike. Dumbfounded, we react as if programmed. The public, like a cheap child's toy, reacts a little less each time the button is pushed until the battery of sensation is flat and sentiment merely clicks as the waters and radiation rise. Everyone knows, but they react like watching a car wreck in slow motion, as though there were nothing to do but wince. The angel walks the beach along the disappearing shore, playing a requiem for species departed, while praying solemnly for those that remain. This next poem is a little less environmentally attached. They vary. It's about the Bay of Fundy, which if you haven't had a chance to just look at it, it's really lovely. Bay of Fundy, Parsboro, Nova Scotia. I'm here again at dockside, half tide and rising. The quay is again surrounded by water. The tides here are the highest in the world. At low tide, boats sit on the ocean bottom. The wharf is landlocked. The water disappeared over the horizon. I'm watching an eagle soar a mile above me while recalling the violent ebbs and surges of manic depressive illness. Dream ships scuttled on the ocean bottom with no medium to buoy them. Hopes stranded like mollusks in the sun. I eye the water rising, wondering where it has been, taste salt and dulse on the air, and find myself wishing for an eternal high tide of the mind. This is a poem, the first bit. I lived in Chile for a little bit, and a kind of a nefarious fellow gave me the first lines of it. He was a much better poet than I'll ever be. So it's a poem for him called Poem for Pepe. What exactly is the speed of darkness? What is the velocity of silence? From which direction does the wind of oblivion blow? The echoes of my silence thunder in my head, shattering tranquility, scattering fragments of thought, shaking the firmament of my equanimity like a bomb blast. Silence leaks into my ears like blood seeping away from the mortally wounded. It sweeps overland like flash flood water. The collective silence turns us into pillars of salt as we glance backward over our shoulder while in full flight. Chop one head and you chop 1,000 tongues. This is the colloquial wisdom gathered from the days of Stalin, Mao, and Hitler. Over 100 million served. I see the red, white, and blues marching this way, reefs of litter in its wake. Cars queued to the horizon, idling each day on choked highways, stacks spewing sulfur in the air. I can feel my lips moving, but hear no sound. Silence, warm and sticky, descends like drool from the corner of my mouth. So this is, I had a friend, kind of a mentor actually. He was, name was Joe. He was actually had a doctorate in mythology and a doctorate in, he was a very intellectual guy, doctorate in counseling and something else, a master's in philosophy. And he used to tell me about the ancients. So this is a poem called Joe and the Punic Wars. It's in small parts. Joe once told me that the Carthaginians would go down to the ocean and whip the water with sterling silver chains, a ceremony to castigate the waters for the ships, and sailors disappeared beneath the sea. Rome and Carthage, they could smell one another on the wind, just like with street gangs, pit dogs, and gamecocks. Violence was inevitable. When the First War was over, the Romans owned the sea. Early autumn, late afternoon, 1993, clocks ticking. Joe puzzled at his kitchen table, minus a shave, minus a shirt. Last night I saw an elephant on the television. It was tethered to a stake in the ground with a piece of rope, he says. Hannibal invades Italy with fighting men and elephants. They cross over mountains, burn townships to the ground. In the end, the elephants all die. Even so, at Cana, a Roman army dies. I asked myself, why doesn't the elephant just rip the stake from the ground or snap the rope like a thread? The TV said that when the elephant is very young, they chain its leg to a stake cemented in the ground. The young elephant pulls and pulls until it practically shears off its own leg. When it finally stops struggling, it can be staked with a rope. Long after the leg is healed, the slight tug of the rope is enough to freeze him. Joe was awake all night because he'd become that elephant. After many years of warfare in Italy with no help from home, Hannibal received an urgent summons from Carthage. Save us. Roman noses, Roman numerals, Romans spreading salt on the charred ruins of Carthage. Carthage destroyed, the men all dead, women and children sold as livestock. Genocide is not a modern concept, but an ancient tradition. Roman numerals on clock towers chime. Time is money. Money is time. Joe was old one day when I went to see him. The TV showed images of rioters looting after yet another police murder. The country's in trouble, I opined. He arched his bushy white eyebrows. My understanding is a little more radical, he said. There is no more country, just variant tribes holding the land. Joe and me at the gas station one day. He told me with a smile, the existential problem is that, to use an automotive analogy, we have no gas gauge. Joe and I at the harbor side, we lean on a rail looking down into the water. The surface of the water is a rainbow petroleum sheen. Styrofoam scraps float next to empty Clorox bottles. Did the ancients really whip the ocean, I asked? Not like we do, he replied. Joe ran out of gas a long way from home. Nicotine tugged, so I light a cigarette. Imagine smoke elephants floating in the exhale. Think of Joe, and I miss him. I'm going to skip that one. I was going to give you a lesson. I was going to read you a Gil Scott-Heron poem, who was the person that got me started writing poetry, I would say. Yeah, and I could skip this one too, but I won't. I'll read quick. You all right?
We're all right.
Yeah, cool. All right, this is called the Chinese merch. This is, I guess, it's a restaurant. Okay, I'll just read it. It's self-explanatory. At the Chinese merch, Scene, a restaurant on the Golden Mile, Route 9, Framingham, Massachusetts. The cuisine is a hybrid of Indian and Chinese food. The wall in front of me is black and maroon with an oblong picture window that looks onto Route 9. I know now that I am but a dot on a dot on a dot set down at a plate of spiced chicken and rice. The land outside the window is ruined. It's been clear-cut, paved over, shackled in concrete and brick. 1 million cars a week pass by here. Only a few stop for the food. I know now that I am a molecule on a pixel that is a point in a portrait America. Mother Earth sleeps here in shackles of ruination, and dream concentrates like the builder of a ship in a bottle. The injustice will be overturned. Grass shall grow from Walmart ashes. Through the clouded window, I see a cloud of starlings wheel through the air like the silken sash of a Spanish dancer. They are the shopping mall heirs. There are no more bluebirds here, no more wolves, no more buffalo, no more Pequod. There are just feral Europeans and their residual spawn, McDonald's, Burger King, and Best Buy. We flourish here on our own offal. Mother Earth will fix our wagon. She'll digest us like a Kentucky fried biscuit. Our civilization plays like a TV set in a sparsely populated bar. The barkeep mindlessly dries glasses. No one stirs, not Jesus or Buddha or Allah. They're all too patient to intervene. I pluck at the last remnants of chicken amongst the rice when my disgruntled observations are suddenly overshadowed by an idea that pulsates like a buoy beacon. Just as the sun makes an appearance through the windows, out through the window, the answer to the riddle circles above me like a flock of seagulls. It was, it is, it will be changing, changing, changing. And the last one, and we'll be done. I did it almost on time, eh? With a late start, not too bad. All right. So the last one is called At the Deli. It's a bit about environment, a bit about people behaving badly, a bit about Allen Ginsberg, and actually I mentioned Chogyam Trungpa, although I don't say Rinpoche. I will say Rinpoche today when I do the poem, I hope, if I remember. At the Deli. This is in parts 2. 1. If I worked at the deli counter, I'd chant mantras while slicing soprasada, scream the rosary inside while weighing the American cheese. 2. It's winter, but hot outside. Beads of sweat feel like poison pellets on my skin. The ground beneath my feet is spongy and moist. It used to be frozen this time of year, but the times and the climate are a-changin'. A solitary bird calls out from a naked tree. Its song sounds like, too late, in the dying afternoon light. The world I thought I knew passes like water through a sieve. My life expands and escapes like cigarette smoke. I've already slept late today, been to the grocery, chatted with a bell ringer from the Salvation Army, saw Christmas coming like an anvil tossed from a building, stood 15th in line at the deli, surrounded by the royalty, mortadella, bologna, and cheese. Dear Allen Ginsberg, I looked over your shoulder today at your supermarket expanding and rising like a psychedelic balloon. The grocery boys that you eyed Walt Whitman eyeing have since fallen to dust. Unbagged groceries are piled higher and higher at the counters. A somber future is painted in the aisles of the Safeways and Piggly Wiggly stores. Genetically altered corn, steroidal chickens the size of turkeys, turkeys the size of dogs, and everything in plastic. I looked over your shoulder and saw Brian Wilson and Walt Whitman harmonizing. I smelled the stale sweat